When police discovered banker Roberto Calvi hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets were filled with bricks and $15,000 in cash. What looked like a suicide quickly became one of the darkest financial mysteries involving the Vatican, the Mafia, and billions of missing dollars. The Mafia called it a warning, and the Vatican called it unfortunate. This is the Financial Historian, where money, power, and history collide, and nothing is ever as simple as it looks. The death of Roberto Calvi in 1982 wasn't just the end of a banker. It was the unmasking of one of the most secretive and dangerous financial empires in the modern world, an empire built on faith, power, and billions of untraceable dollars flowing through the Vatican itself. To understand how a Catholic banker ended up dead beneath a bridge, you have to understand how the Vatican, a city of priests and marble, became a financial superpower that IT started almost a century earlier. In 1929, Pope Pius XI signed the Lateran Treaty with Benito Mussolini. The deal did three things. It made Vatican City a sovereign state, gave the church political independence, and compensated it for centuries of lost property. Mussolini's payment, 1.75 billion lire in cash and government bonds, became the foundation of the Vatican's modern fortune. To manage this money, the church created a new institution, the Istituto per l'Opera di Religione, the Institute for Religious Works, better known as the Vatican Bank. Its official mission was spiritual, to manage funds for religious projects and charities. Its practical advantage was earthly. As a sovereign entity, it operated outside Italian law. No taxes, no audits, no transparency. It was the perfect offshore bank, right in the heart of Rome. By the 1960s, the Vatican Bank had become one of the most secretive financial institutions in the world. It could move money anywhere, for anyone, with no oversight. And as the Cold War intensified, that kind of secrecy became a valuable tool. Enter Banco Ambrosiano, an Italian bank with close ties to the church. Its chairman, Roberto Calvi, was a devout Catholic, charming, ambitious, and ruthlessly creative. He saw opportunity where others saw boundaries. In the 1970s, Calvi began building a network of offshore shell companies in Luxembourg, Panama, Nassau, and South America. These entities, on paper, were independent. In reality, they were controlled by Banco Ambrosiano and often backed by the Vatican Bank itself. Here's how it worked. Calvi would arrange massive loans from Ambrosiano to these offshore fronts. The Vatican Bank would sign letters of guarantee, effectively promising to cover the debt if the borrowers defaulted. But the borrowers didn't exist. They were just paper companies. The loans were fake. The money would disappear into offshore accounts, reappear through intermediaries, and eventually fund political causes, covert operations, and organized crime. Billions were moved this way, quietly, invisibly, and under the banner of religion. During the Cold War, the Vatican and Western intelligence agencies shared one goal: stop communism. And that meant funding anti-communist movements, even if it meant breaking laws. Money from Banco Ambrosiano and the Vatican Bank reportedly flowed to Solidarity, the Polish labor movement led by Lech Walesa, a movement that would help topple Soviet control over Eastern Europe. But not all of it went to noble causes. Some of it went to right-wing regimes in Latin America, black market arms deals, and heroin routes managed by the Sicilian Mafia. In the logic of the Cold War, morality became a currency, and the church, ironically, became a money launderer for God and country. At the center of this web was Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, an American priest from Chicago who served as head of the Vatican Bank. He was a giant of a man, over 6 feet tall, and had earned the nickname the Gorilla. He was close to both Pope Paul VI and Pope John Paul II, and considered untouchable inside the Vatican. Marcinkus and Calvi became partners in what was, effectively, a parallel global banking system, using religious cover to move money that couldn't be traced through traditional channels. For a while, it worked brilliantly. Banco Ambrosiano expanded across Europe and Latin America. Profits soared. Calvi was celebrated in Catholic circles as God's banker. But the illusion began to crack. In 1978, Italian regulators discovered that Ambrosiano had transferred enormous sums abroad without authorization. Calvi was accused of violating currency laws, essentially, of smuggling money out of Italy. He was arrested, convicted, and sentenced to prison. But then, mysteriously, he was released pending appeal and reinstated as chairman. His power seemed to survive everything. Meanwhile, new accounts kept surfacing: anonymous companies, untraceable transfers, letters of guarantee signed by the Vatican Bank itself. It became clear that Ambrosiano wasn't just laundering money. It was sustaining an entire ecosystem of power, political, religious, and criminal. And the Vatican wasn't an innocent bystander. It was the silent partner. By the early 1980s, the numbers no longer added up. Ambrosiano's foreign loans exceeded its actual capital. Over $1.3 billion was unaccounted for. When investigators closed in, Calvi begged the Vatican for help. He wrote to Pope John Paul II himself, warning that if the bank collapsed, it would expose the church's secret financial operations. His plea went unanswered. On June 17, 1982, Calvi fled Italy under a false name, carrying cash and documents that allegedly detailed the Vatican's involvement. 10 days later, he was dead, hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London. The symbolism was impossible to ignore. The Blackfriars referred to the Dominican order, a nickname also used by members of the Masonic Lodge Propaganda or P2, an underground network of businessmen, politicians, and spies linked to both the Mafia and Italian intelligence. Calvi had been a member, so had top military officers, secret service agents, and financiers. To the public, P2 was just another Masonic lodge. In reality, it was a parallel government, a web of influence connecting Italy's most powerful men, from bankers to generals. And now its banker was dead, swinging beneath a bridge, pockets full of bricks. His secretary, Graziella Carroccia, had already fallen to her death from Ambrosiano's Milan headquarters. Within weeks, the bank collapsed entirely. What followed was one of the most complex financial investigations in modern history. Auditors traced the missing money through dozens of shell companies and offshore havens. The trail led again and again to the Vatican Bank. The Vatican denied everything. It claimed the ILAR, the Vatican Bank, was merely a shareholder, not responsible for Ambrosiano's debts. But investigators found letters signed by Archbishop Marcinkus guaranteeing loans that totaled hundreds of millions of dollars. In the eyes of the law, those letters made the Vatican liable. Italy's prosecutors wanted Marcinkus arrested, but they couldn't. He had Vatican citizenship and lived behind its walls, beyond the reach of Italian courts. The world was watching. The Church's reputation was burning, and the Holy See, the symbol of moral authority, had become a haven for white-collar crime. When Banco Ambrosiano collapsed in 1982, it didn't just take investors down with it. It took the Vatican's secrets into the light. Billions had vanished through offshore networks that existed only on paper, and for the first time in centuries, the Holy See faced a worldly problem it couldn't pray away: an international financial investigation. The Vatican's first move was denial. Archbishop Marcinkus, the head of the Vatican Bank, insisted that the IOR had no involvement in Ambrosiano's missing money. But investigators had documents, letters on Vatican stationery, signed by Marcinkus himself, guaranteeing Ambrosiano's offshore loans. Those signatures made the Vatican liable for over $1 billion. When Italian prosecutors tried to indict Marcinkus, the Vatican invoked sovereignty. They claimed Italian law didn't apply within its walls. Technically true, thanks to the Lateran Treaty of 1929. Marcinkus simply refused to leave Vatican City. For 7 years, he lived behind its gates, immune to arrest. Meanwhile, the trail of money led deeper into a world of shadows. Forensic accountants uncovered connections between Ambrosiano's accounts and the Sicilian Mafia, South American drug cartels, and even Latin American death squads. Some of the same offshore entities tied to Calvi's bank were being used to funnel weapons and cash to right-wing dictatorships during the Cold War. The Vatican's role in those operations remains officially unclear. Unofficially, historians and journalists agree. The Vatican's financial network was used as cover for political funding, part of a larger anti-communist strategy supported by Western intelligence agencies. When ideology and money mixed, moral lines disappeared. And so did witnesses. Within months of Calvi's death, several key figures connected to Ambrosiano also turned up dead, from overdoses, suicides, and accidents. None of them lived to testify. As the investigation dragged on, the Vatican's image suffered. For centuries, it had been seen as the guardian of souls. Now it looked like a haven for offshore money. Even devout Catholics began asking the unthinkable. Had the church lost its soul to its balance sheet? By 1984, after years of legal battles, the Vatican reached a deal with Italian authorities. It agreed to pay $250 million in compensation to Ambrosiano's creditors, a goodwill settlement, not an admission of guilt. But the message was clear: silence has a price. The Pope publicly called the crisis a grave sorrow. Behind closed doors, the Vatican's financial arm was quietly reorganized. Marcinkus remained in charge until 1989, then retired to the United States, where he lived out his days playing golf in Arizona. He was never charged. And Roberto Calvi? His death was officially ruled a suicide, until forensic re-examinations decades later proved otherwise. He had been murdered. The evidence was unmistakable. His neck injuries didn't match a hanging. He had been strangled elsewhere, then suspended under the bridge. British courts reopened the case in 2003. 5 suspects, including Mafia figures, stood trial. All were acquitted for lack of evidence. But testimony revealed what most had long suspected. Calvi had been killed because he knew too much. He was the man who had moved money for governments, gangsters, and the church, and in the end, he became expendable to all 3. What made the Ambrosiano scandal so extraordinary wasn't just the corruption. It was the scale of the cover-up. Every institution involved, the Vatican, the Italian state, the intelligence community, had a reason to bury it. Too many reputations, too many alliances, too many secrets were at stake. And that secrecy became the Vatican's default posture. In the decades that followed, new scandals emerged, each one echoing the same pattern. 1993, Vatican officials caught in a $500 million money laundering case involving political kickbacks. 2010, Italian prosecutors froze Vatican accounts linked to suspicious cross-border transfers. 2013, Pope Benedict XVI resigns, the first pope in nearly 600 years to do so, amid leaks that expose corruption and infighting within the Curia. The Vatican's own watchdog describes the IOR as a possible conduit for illicit funds. Pope Francis pledged reform. He replaced senior officials, brought in outside auditors, and passed new transparency rules. But the IOR, the Vatican Bank, remains a black box. It has no shareholders, no public reporting, and answers only to the Pope himself. It is, even today, a sovereign offshore bank, operating at the intersection of spirituality and secrecy. You could argue that every major power in history eventually learns the same lesson. To survive, you must control not just belief, but the machinery behind it. The Vatican simply learned that lesson early and perfected it. What makes this story so haunting isn't that priests became bankers. It's that bankers became priests of a different kind, guardians of faith redefined as financial faith, where the currency was trust and the balance sheet was moral authority. And the Vatican wasn't alone. The Ambrosiano scandal foreshadowed what would become the architecture of modern global finance. Offshore accounts, shell companies, political money laundering, and the quiet fusion of religious, corporate, and state power. Today, the same mechanisms that hid billions for the church are used by corporations, oligarchs, and governments worldwide. The church didn't invent corruption. It simply baptized it. Because in the end, the Ambrosiano affair wasn't about theology. It was about leverage, moral, political, and financial. The Vatican's sovereignty gave it the same power that modern billionaires seek in offshore tax havens, the right to operate outside the reach of law. That's why, even after losing billions and a banker, the Vatican Bank survived. It couldn't fail, because to admit its role would have meant dismantling the illusion that faith and finance were separate. And illusions, in power, are everything. Look at any institution built on moral authority, governments, NGOs, even modern corporations. The pattern repeats. The larger the ideal, the darker the shadow. The Ambrosiano scandal simply showed us that the world's oldest religious empire was also one of its most sophisticated financial ones. And while Roberto Calvi's body may have swung beneath a bridge in London, the system he helped build never stopped moving. It evolved. It digitized. It became global. Today, the Vatican Bank still manages billions in assets. It still operates outside any national jurisdiction. And though popes may preach simplicity, the empire of money remains intact. Because faith, in its purest form, asks for belief without proof. And finance, when stripped of numbers, asked for the same thing. The hidden banking scandal that shook the Vatican wasn't just about greed. It was about the oldest temptation of power, the belief that the rules don't apply to you when you claim to serve something higher. History doesn't repeat, but it rhymes in Latin. And every time the church promises transparency, the faithful look to heaven, while the accountants look to Switzerland. Because in the world of global finance, power doesn't disappear, it evolves, hides, and survives. And the Vatican banking scandal is proof that the biggest secrets in history are never truly buried, only protected.